The only way you can take CBS Sports Radio 1140 with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today. Listen to us anytime, anywhere. You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. The nation and the league arrive in Las Vegas in 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Good morning and welcome, not to the studios of CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM, but today we are on location at Emerald Isle Casino in beautiful downtown Henderson, of course, on Water Street. If you haven't been to downtown Henderson lately, man, it has come a long way since the early days. Back even just 10 years ago, it's excelled, and the Emerald Isle Casino is a beautiful place to be. I want to thank Tim from the Emerald Isle Casino for having us out here. And for all of you, welcome again to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. We're here to join you and talk to you about Raider football. We were in London last week, so we go all the way from London to Henderson. That's right.
The Raiders had a long road trip.
They talk about the Raiders road trip, but I'll tell you what, we've had a bit of our own, and so we're back here and glad to be home in Nevada. We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. The Raiders 3-2, won 2 in a row by a big win in London, of course, against the Bears. We're going to talk about that. We were there. We will also talk about the team as it enters the bye week, right? So the Raiders are at 3-2 in the playoff picture early, so we'll talk about that as well. And always joining me along for the ride here and sometimes contributing. No, I'm just kidding. My guys, my team, they are the crew, and I'll start with Chaz Osborne. Chaz, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, doing good. Got reacclimated to the time zone. Ready to go.
You're over jet lag? Yeah, you're done?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Easy.
And then, of course, Kelly Kreiner. How you doing, Kelly?
Doing good. See, if you only go for like 2 days, you don't even get jet lag because you're not there long enough to realize there's a difference in time.
That was amazing.
That's true. We were there for a quick one. But what we want to do today, guys, is we're going to jump in on the Raiders and what's going on in this bye week. Of course, look where they're at, 3-2. I know it is really early, people talking about playoff picture and all that stuff. And to me, it is way, way too early to do that. But you got to like where they're at. If you think about where we were a couple weeks ago when this team came off that horrendous loss against Minnesota, where they just looked outmatched, didn't look really interested in being there, to be honest with you. Couldn't play well on defense. Their offense couldn't get going. It was sputtering. The last 2 weeks, you see encouraging signs, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an emotional game, and they, when they get up, sometimes it's just lackluster, but when they get up, and they're such a resilient team. And this last week in London was just another total team effort, right? They, incognito, the early penalty, that momentum killer with the fumble, the miscommunication between Carr, but both sides of the line dominated. They were resilient. They gave up the lead. The momentum totally went the Bears' way in the third quarter, and then credit to the Raiders for coming back in that fourth quarter, sticking with it, and ultimately winning the game.
Kelly, what did you see last week that really impressed you? I know we were up there, and we talked a lot about what we expected, what they needed to do, and they did most of what they needed to win that game, right?
Yeah, they executed their game plan perfectly. It's like I jokingly said that everything I said Chase Daniels didn't do, he did in the game.
Exactly.
So, I mean, but that was a big part of what the Raiders were doing. Chaz said it perfectly. They dominated both sides, both lines.
Yep.
Both sides of the ball were just taking it to them. And I don't think Chicago was prepared for them to come out with that, to get physically manhandled like that. It just completely took them off their game.
Yeah. Well, there's been 5 kind of controversial moves since Coach Gruden took over. Of course, last year the trades of Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper. And then the 3 questionable free agent signings this year, Antonio Brown, Vontez Burfict, and Richie Incognito. So far, 4 of those 5 moves have not worked out favorably for Gruden. So, fingers crossed for Incognito that he holds it together.
That's a good way to put it.
But, there's no way Coach Gruden was going to let Khalil Mack have any say in the outcome of that game last week. And you can see it. The first play of the game, Mack was triple teamed, right? And then all throughout the game, double team. They're throwing chip blocks at him, and then they're running Jacobs right at him just to keep him on his heels so he couldn't pin his ears back and go right after Derek Carr. So it's the same thing. You know, if we were playing, the Cowboys, they would have had a spy on Amari Cooper the whole time, right? They would have double teamed Amari Cooper. You know, there's no way they would have let that be the narrative of the game. And you can see it in that locker room clip how excited Gruden was after the game. Obviously, he's excited for the win, but I think it was even sweeter that Khalil Mack was a non-factor.
No doubt. I mean, and if you look at what they were able to do on the offensive line, Kelly, I mean, that's what was impressive. You said it on our show from Tottenham Stadium that Colton Miller was going to have to put on his big boy pants and show a big jump up, and he did that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and he's looked really good so far this year. You know, Chaz mentioned the first play of the game. Not only did they chip block with Jacobs, but the play is going completely away from Mack, and they still send Incognito to go out there and just lay him down just to set the tone for that game. And they, like you said, everybody's got a plan. Do you get punched in the face? And they just punched him in the face right off the bat.
That was great.
And the Bears' defense was just never on sync from that point on.
And how fitting that the game ended with a Raiders sack, right? Instead of a Bear. You guys were talking about last week, both of you were acting like it was 1985 Bears defense. And here the Raiders come out and just smash mouth it to them. Game ends with a Mo Hurst second sack of the day.
And it's good. It's good to see Mo finally show up because that's we'll be talking about it later with like the position groups. But he's had a really slow start to the season. Hopefully this will jumpstart him, get him going because he looked really good.
Yep.
No, they all look good, and I think that we saw, especially with the suspension of Vontaze Burfict and with the fact that we knew he would not be back, and I think everybody who kind of followed had the feeling that suspension would be upheld, right? So Tahir Whitehead moves in the middle, okay, and he had a great game as well. He really performed well. If you look at Tahir Whitehead, leading tackler on the team through 5 weeks as well. So guys have to step up, and I think that's where you're at. When you're in a rebuilding situation and you're not quite there and you don't have all the talent you need guys to play above what they usually are. And I think Tahir Whitehead in the middle is doing the job.
Yep. I think just the narrative all week, the Raiders hearing about this great Bears team, the great Bears defense. And, like I said, the Raiders got there early, so they were already kind of acclimated. I was at a couple of the practices. You could see that there was just a little crispness to them. They were just a little bit sharp. They had a little bit of edge. And they came out and they showed it and they proved it.
They did.
Yeah. One thing really quick.
Yeah.
It was 8 years ago this week that the passing of Al Davis. So I just want to take a moment to recognize him and thank him for making the Raiders exceptional. If we could do that.
Kelly's got something to say.
Oh, no.
I agree with you.
No, it just came out of nowhere. I
forgot about
I
that.
expected this sometime during the show, but I just wasn't expecting it right off the top. It just got to came out of nowhere.
Kelly wants a study hall on segways. No, you're right, Chaz. It was eight years ago, 2011. And, of course, that was a big deal. You saw the Raiders really kind of celebrate that. John Gruden mentioned it at his press conference.
Right.
And no matter, there's a lot of people who want to write the history of Al Davis based on the last several years of the Raiders and their lack of success on the field.
Right.
But when you look at the totality of what Al Davis did, not only for his franchise,
for the league,
but for the league, for the game, it is significant. So it is worth mentioning. And, it was, I think, something that younger players with the Raiders, when you talk to them, they get it. Like they're told, they're given the history by guys like Tim Brown, guys like Jim Plunkett, guys like, our good friend and unfortunately late Cliff Branch, who would come in and talk to those young guys about the history of the franchise. So it's always important to remember that and know where they're going and remember who started it all. At the same time, now they're focused on the future, and I like where this team is going. I think, again, what you see, and as I've said, and we keep beating the drum, it's one step forward, two step back sometime, right?
Yep.
So you have still a tough slate ahead. You got to go on the road at Green Bay. I was having a conversation on Twitter with somebody yesterday saying, how can Green Bay be favored by 6.5 at home or 7 at home? I'm like, you're kidding, right? It's Green Bay at home in Lambeau Field. And frankly, doesn't mean the Raiders can't win the game. I'm just saying right now that roster, even though the Packers were much, much blown up too big in the preseason, they're a better squad right now than the Raiders overall.
Yeah. And like you said, by 7 points, a lot of people don't realize how point spreads come around.
Exactly.
Green Bay's got the 4-point home advantage. So they're basically saying that the Packers are a field goal better than the Raiders. And I think that's kind of generous, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I would actually have the Packers a little more of a favorite than that. But, I mean, it's kind of in that. That's kind of the realm where it should be. So, yeah, that's not outlandish for them to be a touchdown favorite at home.
No. You'd add that half a point? Is that how far you would go?
That's a big
Yeah,
half.
that's a good point.
That's a big half
That's
a point
big
in
half.
Vegas.
7.5. That's a prime number.
Well, I thought 6.5 was right on, but they went up to 7 already. We'll see if it goes up anymore. But I think the Raiders are in a situation where now people are starting to take notice. They're playing good ball, and we're going to talk more in depth about that with Mo next.
Yep.
After we get through the break, and then throughout the show, we're going to address. That's the one thing we wanted to do with this bye week is kind of go through a lot of what we've seen so far this year, where we're at as far as the Raiders are concerned when it comes to offense, defense, and by position. Right, we have all the guys here going to break down by position some of what we've seen through 5. Now, it's only 5 games, right? It's not even half the season.
Right.
But this is the time of the year that I've always said you start to see kind of who teams are really. They set forward kind of what they're going to be throughout the season. And I think that holds true sans a bunch of injuries, right, guys? I mean.
Well, everyone was talking about this road trip, how this long 6 weeks away from home was kind of going to throw a wrench into the whole Raiders season. And I love the way they've kind of flipped the script and, they've used it to bond and kind of galvanize the team.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's important, especially with a young team, right? I mean,
yeah.
You saw it when we were there. I think that's a very, very important thing. All right, well, we are going to step aside and pay some bills. When we come back, we're going to be joined from Brooklyn. Our man, Moe Moton, senior contributor here at Silver and Black Today, will join us. He's going to tell us about his latest column on silverandblacktoday.com about how the Raiders went to London in search of, which is back on TV, by the way, in search of an identity. And guess what? He says they found it. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today here, live from the Emerald Isle Casino on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
Chiefs.
Stand by.
This morning at 10 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Hey, this is Eric Allen. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We are coming to you live on location from the Emerald Isle Casino here in Henderson, Nevada. Right outside. Actually, I can say this, guys. Henderson, Nevada, the home of the Las Vegas Raiders, because their headquarters is being built right here in Henderson outside of Las Vegas and just a few miles away from Allegiant Stadium. And we are now going to be joined by our good friend, our senior contributor, NFL columnist at Silver and Black today, and his name is Moe Moton. Mo joins us from the East Coast, from Brooklyn. He's probably on getting ready for lunch and to watch some football. Mo, thanks for being back with us here on the Silver and Black today. Hey, Mo. Oh, we're waiting for Mo. We'll get him.
Yeah,
we got him.
I got to hit the other button,
We got.
too. There's the other button.
There he is. Mo, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, there he is. All right, thanks for joining us, man. We had a little button issue on our end. Hey, okay, so let's jump right into what we want to talk to you about today with the guys. We're going to have you here now and after the next break as well, because there's just so much to talk about when we look at what's going on with the Raiders and what we've seen so far in 2019. And your last column on silverandblacktoday.com, you said, look, they went over to London, right, after a good win in Indianapolis, after a terrible outing in Minneapolis, but they went over to London, got a huge win against the Bears, and more importantly, Mo, you said they found kind of this identity that they've carved out for themselves. Tell us a little bit about that premise and how you think that happened.
Pretty much, they're a physical football team, and that's on both sides of the ball. I know Raiders fans are a little upset about the sack count, but looking at what they're doing, guys like Max Crosby showing up, Mo Hurst had 2 sacks that game, so their defense pulled through when many people thought that without Burfict, that defense wouldn't be able to stop anyone. The real identity comes on the offensive side when you look at that offensive line. And I know this is a lot of people like to talk about 2016 when the Raiders had a great offensive line. I would say this offensive line is pretty much up there. I got to give credit to my guy, Tom Cable. A lot of people criticize him, including me, but that team is very physical up front. Of course, you got Josh Jacobs, who I believe is the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's running the ball quite well. Better than a lot of people thought, maybe, because he didn't carry a heavy load at Alabama, but they're feeding him the rock as he's producing. So that team can push you around up front, and we saw that against the Bears. I think that shocked a lot of people, including myself again. I had a tweet that said, if you had to guess which team ran for 99 yards, had 3 sacks and an interception, was dominating in the trenches in the first half, you would have probably guessed the Bears, but of course it was the Raiders.
Yep, it was. And Mo, I mean, you talk about that and how when looking at that Bears game, and hey, look, we said, with the exception of Chaz, we said that we all said that the Bears would win that game, and I think when you look at statistically where they were and how dominant the Bears defense had been, that wasn't a bad call. At the same time, though, you mentioned it, and we talked about it in our pregame show last week, which was that offensive line had to come out and play lights out. Not only that, but they had to get a pass rush on Daniel, who was a backup quarterback. Even though everyone was talking, they were better with him than with Trubisky, and they did, right? I mean, you talk about Tom Cable. He perhaps is one of the most unheralded guys in all of this mini run that they've had so far over the last 2 games. What is it? I mean, I see them playing inside, outside, zone, power, and they're doing it all pretty well.
Yeah, they're playing it pretty well, but you also have to give credit to guys like Colton Miller, who a lot of people criticized last year. Of course, he had some knee injuries. Now he's healthy. He looks good. He's quick. He had a block going down the sideline at one point, I believe, in the Colts of the Bears game, and he looks good. And he's put on weight, and that's the thing. He maintained his athleticism, because that was his calling card coming out of UCLA, is that he's athletic. He may be a little bit of a project. He's not where he needs to be yet to be a top offensive tackle, but he can move. And I believe he bulked up to 333 pounds, and he can still move. Trent Brown, as we know, came over, and he's just a mountain of men to get through. Richie Incognito helped. I know he had that personal foul, but that's part of the nastiness that Raiders offensive line needed. So he's much welcome on that front. As we know, Rodney Hudson has been steady over the last couple of years coming from Kansas City. And, of course, they'll get Gabe Jackson pretty soon. Gruden hopes that he comes back against either Green Bay or Houston. So, again, that offensive line is playing pretty well with Tom Cable pulling the strings and keeping Derek Carr clean.
Again, we're speaking to Moe Moton, senior NFL columnist at silverandblacktoday.com, also contributor over at Bleacher Report.
Hey, Mo, it's Kelly here. You mentioned Gabe Jackson coming back. How important was it for this team to kind of start to gel on the offensive line before he comes back? Because that way you're still integrating a new piece, but you've gone a little farther than you thought you would before, so it should be a little more of a seamless integration.
Yeah, you hear when I listen to a lot of former offensive linemen talk, you hear them say that you want guys to gel. It's one thing to have a piece here, a piece there, but you want those 5 guys to gel as much as possible. So when you have the 4 guys there, especially Richie Incognito missing 2 games, playing well together, it makes it easier for Gabe Jackson to just come in and do his job. Because he's been there. He's not a new guy. He's not Richie Incognito coming in. He's not Colton Miller having to bounce back off of a inconsistent rookie season. He's not Trent Brown, who's a new face. He's been there. So you're not really worried about him. You let the guys that are new to kind of be gel within that line, and then you can see Gabe Jackson come in and just, again, do his job on his side of the ball. So I think it's a pretty good outlook for the Rays offensive line going forward.
Hey, Mo, it's Chaz. You point out in your article that a lot of young players are ahead of the learning curve. In our show just before the season, we all kind of talked about win totals for the season, and I kind of kept it low just because of the fact we had a lot of first- and second-year players. You mentioned, Colton Miller, Josh Jacobs. Who are the other young players that you really see, progressing ahead of that learning curve?
I would say Max Crosby. I mean, I know he's a 4th-round pick, and his numbers don't pop in the box score, but if you're watching the game, you're seeing him flash. Right? I know he had his first sack in London, and he's popping up to draw the ball loose, things of that matter. Darren Wells is a guy I pointed out in my article. I know he's been around a while, but this is his first full year playing tight end full-time as a starter. And what he's doing with that, within the offense, with the limited weapons, you have to look at that. I know he didn't have a big game against Chicago, but look at his numbers. I believe he leads all tight ends and receptions with, I believe, about 30-70 catches. So you have to give him some credit. I just want to make a quick note about Cleveland Farrell. I know a lot of people are talking about this, and a lot of people are saying, well, where's Cleveland Farrell? He's got to step up. And a lot of people jump to say, well, Mack only had 4 sacks in his rookie year. But I will say, you don't even need to bring up Khalil Mack in this situation. I mean, it's just common sense. He's 4 games into his career. Give him time. Give him time to find his legs. He does have, I know a lot of people like to look at sacks. He only has 1 sack, and that was like a coverage sack against Joe Flacco. But he does have 6 pressures, and I think over time he'll catch on. I saw him as a 6-7 sack guy. He will come along, but he's showing up, but the sacks will come eventually.
Yeah, Mo, I agree with that, too. I think that too often fans watch football as they're watching the ball. They're not always watching what's happening away from the ball. Right. And clearly when you see Clelin Ferrell on the field, yes, it doesn't. He's having trouble occasionally. He's developing, and I think that in any player, especially first-round draft pick, you want immediate impact. And I think fans often have an unrealistic expectation of where they're going to be after 5 weeks, but you need to be able to do that. Now, I know, Kelly, we had some conversation about that pick at the time, and not everybody was on board with picking him that high, but I think you have him there now. It's just going to take a little bit of time to develop him.
Yeah, and people need to realize he's never going to be a 14, 15 kind of sack a season guy. Yeah. He's going to be dominant against the run. He's going to set the edge. He's going to get you that 8 to 10 kind of sack range. They didn't bring him in to be that big time pass rusher off the edge. They brought him in as a tone setter, and it's not sexy to do that with the 4th pick. But it's like I said at the draft, in their first round, they went for 3 doubles.
Yeah,
I think worst case scenario, they've got 3 doubles.
Right. They also brought him in for for his character and those kind of leadership qualities that he brings to the table.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. He's a good kid, and I think that as you say, Mo, people have to just relax a little bit, and you're seeing development, and you're seeing good performances there from those guys up front, including P.J. Hall, who's had some nice plays. Again, they're not all going to scream off that sheet, but when you look at the Raiders' defense, ranked 16th in the league right now, where they've been over the past couple of years, that is not all that bad.
That's a major improvement.
Yes, especially when you're building. So we'll have to see. All right, Mo, stay there. We're going to step aside for a moment. When we come back, we'll have Mo with Mo Moton
More
here
Mo.
Give me some
on
Mo.
Silver and Black today. We'll talk about the receiving corps. We'll talk Derek Carr. We'll talk linebackers. Right, Kelly? They don't need linebackers, right?
No,
not in Paul Gunther's system.
Yeah,
All
Paul
right.
Gunther's system does not need linebackers.
Don't go anywhere. We continue our conversation with Moe Moton here from the Emerald Isle Casino live in Henderson, Nevada. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Raider Nation rallies with us.
The mob is restless after 2 straight losses.
Get that 8th win. You might win one or get one here, make yourself 9-7 or something like that. The possibility of getting in a wild card. Who knows?
Welcome back. Las Vegas' only all Raiders talk show, Silver and Black today.
The Oakland Raiders select Josh Jacobs,
There it is.
running back.
Knock on wood if they're with me.
Your Las Vegas home for complete Raiders and NFL coverage.
1 extra 60.
CBS Sports Radio 1140.
.com.
CBS Sports Radio. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back to the Emerald Isle Casino. That's right, Silver and Black today, coming to you live today from Henderson, Nevada. And the wonderful people here at Emerald Isle, downtown Henderson off of Water Street. Fantastic place. Come down, have some fun on your Sunday. Say hello.
You don't like that D, do you?
Emerald
Island?
Emerald
Island?
Emerald.
You're over here like Emerald
like
Isle.
Emerald Lagasse?
Like,
no,
oh,
Emerald Isle. That is Mark Bonilla, our executive producer here, correcting me. I love it. Thank you very much. But here we are.
Excuse me, sir. Could you just make sure the phone calls come in correctly?
Hey, bite me.
Uh-oh. Speaking of phone calls, we go back out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line, and we are joined again by our senior NFL columnist and contributor here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, and that, of course, is Moe Moton. We're talking about his latest work and how he feels the Raiders finally found an identity when it comes to this young roster. So, Mo, there's still some big questions I think have been answered early in the season. There's still a lot out there. And one of the questions that they haven't been able to, and it really, if you can be critical of John Gruden in one area as far as the roster makeup goes, it's been at wide receiver. Of course, the Antonio Brown thing, no one knew that would blow up, right? But that did blow up, and so they had an issue there. They built the offense around him. He's not there. So they've continued to churn through wide receivers, but Darren Waller has stuck out. We talked about that before the break. But if you look at this, to me, I see fans out there talking about A.J. Green. I see Stephon Diggs. I see all these people wanting to make trades. With a heavy draft in the wide receiver position coming up in this course of the year, how do you look at that receiver core, Mo, and how they should approach it moving towards 2020 and the move to Las Vegas?
Well, it definitely has to get Derek Carr a number one type wide receiver. I was watching the Oklahoma-Texas game yesterday, and CeeDee Lamb just looked unbelievable. Yep. And he was able to shake away from 5 Texas defenders, and then 3 Texas defenders on 2 of his touchdowns. So he's the guy to look out for. The Raiders at this point, the Raiders look like they're going to be out of range for Jerry Jeudy if he's the first wide receiver to come off the board. Yeah. So again, CeeDee Lamb is somebody to look at. But interesting enough, coming into the season, the Raiders wide receiver core looks like it could be one of the top 10 in the league with Antonio Brown. And all of a sudden now, the Raiders are digging for wide receivers. Of course, they traded for Zay Jones. So it's just pretty interesting how injuries and a guy who just goes rogue can hurt a unit. But again, they're doing the best with what they have. Of course, they're running the ball a lot. But if you look at it, Terrell Williams didn't play last game. He has a foot injury. Where I will caution is when you have a foot injury with a guy like Terrell Owens, who's 6'4", 205, you worry about a Liz Frank problem. And, of course, that's the injury that Cam Newton is supposedly dealing with. So he could miss multiple games if it's serious. John Gruden said he was unsure of Terrell Williams' status as well as Dwayne Harris. So this is another reason why they brought in Zay Jones. Of course, they dropped J.J. Nelson. So, again, that wide receiver core needs some help. I know they have Darren Waller tight end who's playing well, and they line him up in different spots. But, again, the third round of the draft, since they gave up their second-round pick, is something that I would look at for a wide receiver.
Hey, Mo, it's Kelly again. When we were in London, we talked to Vic Tafer, and he was saying that, Derek Carr might be 50-50 to come back. How much do you think the wide receiving position is going to factor in that? We've still yet to see Carr with a number one wide receiver. We're not exactly sure what he could do if you could have that, but the way it looks now, we might never see that. So do you think this is going to be weigh in heavy on the Carr decision, or is this going to be something that they just have to put aside and say, we've seen what he's done, where are we going from here?
Okay, I don't have a half hour to discuss this. This is a huge subject with Derek Carr because we're in his 6th season now, and it seems like every year there's something. Oh, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that, he doesn't have this. He's doing the best of what he can now, and I can't criticize Derek Carr now because he's playing well with what he has. Mm-hmm. But I would hate to have a conversation skew into if he doesn't play well in the second half of the season, I would hate to have this conversation about, okay, he didn't play well because he didn't have a number one wide receiver, so now we got to wait for a 7th year to see what he can really be again. I just don't want to go down that road of conversation. I would prefer we just look at Derek Carr for what he can do. What is his pocket presence like? What are his decisions like in the pocket? And then assess him based on that. But again, give him credit. He's doing it without a number one. And he's not, again, if Terrell Williams doesn't come back, then we're definitely going to say, well, if Derek Carr's numbers are down, he just needs a number one wide receiver. We'll see what he can do with that. But I will say this, with Gruden, his identity is running the football and being physical. So Josh Jacobs, for now, is the engine to that offense. But yes, again, I would look for the Raiders to draft a wide receiver and people will say, okay, we'll see what he can do with the number one. I think that will weigh into it. But again, if he's skittish in the pocket or if he's making bad decisions, then I can see Gruden moving on.
Yeah. All right, as we get a balloon popping here, we're talking to Moe Moton, our senior NFL columnist and a contributor at Bleacher Report as well. And that's what I've said about Derek Carr. I mean, look, Derek Carr's playing well. He played well last week. He played well the week before. He's being asked to do, in fact, John Gruden said this week that he's helping the running game. He's leading his team on the field. So before the Carr haters get crazy and before the Carr lovers say you can't criticize him for doing anything, nobody's perfect. I think that Carr is doing a great job. We're going to talk more in depth about it later in the show. But to me, Derek Carr is not losing you games. He's helping you win games. And at this point, Raider Nation, even if you don't like Derek Carr and you don't think he's the answer in the future, you cannot tell me, Chaz, that that's not the truth.
Well, I know we're going to get into it a little later in the show, and Derek Carr, I've always been kind of a backer of Derek Carr, but as I go back and look at a little bit of the tape, I'm starting to see things that he's not seeing, and it's starting to maybe come into question a little bit. Now, Mo, you talked about Carr playing well with what he's got to work with, and I think we all agree that Darren Waller's a top 5 tight end, but I'm thinking that Foster Moreau's not too far behind him. His learning curve as well, like you said in the earlier. Now, the one thing I'm not getting is the running back. The Bears hadn't allowed a rushing touchdown all season. We had 3 rushing touchdowns against them. Josh Jacobs is unbelievable. But, you're seeing Dalvin Cook, you're seeing Christian McCaffrey. We had this conversation earlier. I don't understand why the running back is becoming just a lost thing. We can, Carr like to your point, Carr doesn't need to be that, raw, 300-yard pass or 3 touchdowns a game. We can rely heavy on the running game and make it a full team effort.
Yeah, Mo, what about that? I mean, you look at what the Raiders are doing now with the run game. The run game is driving their offense. It's why they've won the last 2 games. This is at a time when you start to hear in the NFL that you don't need the dominant running back, right?
Yeah.
You had it in Los Angeles with Todd Gurley, who's now injured, and who knows what's going to happen with him. But why is it different in John Gruden's offense with the running back than maybe some of the other spread West Coast offenses we're seeing in the league?
Well, when you're dealing with John Gruden's offense, a lot of people are criticizing Derek Carr for short passes. And I know you had Lincoln Kennedy on when he talked about maybe part of it could be Derek Carr. But the point of his offense is you got to complete passes. Derek Carr right now leads the league with completion percentage, 73.3%. Mm-hmm. So you want those short passes, and it kind of supplements, in a sense, the run game, even though the Raiders do have run game. So it's a lot of short passes, a lot of motions, a lot of eye candy out there. So what they're doing is they're dressing up their plays to get what they want. And that's when you see matchups like Foster Moreau breaking out for a catch, Hunter Renfrow with an occasional third down reception. It opens it up for those guys who are less talented, who people aren't looking for on the scout sheet, but they show up in big, crucial moments. Again, we saw Foster Moreau have 2 big catches on that last 97 game-winning drive against the Bears. And again, part of that is because the run game is percolating and Derek Carr is accurate and precise. Now, again, you mentioned he's not a guy that's going to throw 3 touchdowns, 300 yards. And I've said this. Throughout his whole career, he hasn't been that.
Right.
He hasn't averaged more than 270 passing yards for a game in any of his 6 seasons. So he needs a run game. He's not an Aaron Rodgers. He's not a Deshaun Watson. And that's fine. You can still win with that.
Yep.
Especially with your run game playing the way it's playing right now.
No, and that's the thing. I think Raider fans, at least anecdotally, what I see folks commenting on the internet is that they want that big arm, that country arm that's going to go way downfield. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe, Mo, and I think you said this in your latest Bleacher Report piece as well, which is at some point he's going to have to go down the field more, depending on how the game dictates. As defenses figure out that Raiders rushing offense a little more, you have to mix up. You have to have balance, and I think that's where you're going to see, some have Carr step up, and he's done it in the past. When he's had to throw the ball, he's been able to do it. It's not like he's got a weak arm or he can't throw accurately, correct?
That's correct. And again, what you want to see from Derek Carr is precision. Now, again, as you said, once they get behind, they fall behind. Now, they're a good first-half team. I believe I pointed this out in my article. I believe they're averaging 13.8 in the first half, 6 in the second half.
Right.
Now, if they have a tendency to give up leads like they did against the Bears and they got to play from behind or they got to get the lead back, he's going to have to push the ball down the field. And I think we're going to see that against teams like Green Bay and Houston, who they have coming up on the schedule. I know Green Bay doesn't have Devontae Adams, but Aaron Jones is still a monster in the backfield that can catch and run. So I think the Raiders are going to have to score a little bit more points or sustain what they do in the first half. We're going to have to see Derek Carr push the ball downfield with or without Terrell Williams on the outside. So you're going to see Darren Waller, you might see Foster Moreau, 2 tight end sets. Hopefully we see more Josh Jacobs catching out of the backfield. Mm-hmm. But you're going to see more short passes, and you're going to have to see more intermediate and long passes to Derek Carr. Raiders want to sustain their offense from the first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, Mo, and to your point, the Raiders had 2 drives of over 90 yards in that game against that Bears defense. So they are pushing the ball down the field. They're moving it. And like Carr said a couple of weeks ago, they're just not finishing drive. They're not finishing with points on these long drives.
No, that's it. Now, Mo, you said, and we have some viewers watching our live simulcast on video today, pointing out how you said that this team would be awful. I corrected them and said, no, you didn't say they'd be awful. You just said they would win 3 games. There's a difference there. But now, when you look at the remaining schedule in the minute and a half or so we have left with you here, when you look at the remaining schedule, they're now at that 3-win threshold. Where do they go from here? Of course, God bless them, the optimistic Raider fans, Chess, who think that they're going to win 8 or 9 games. I still like them where Vegas put them at 6 wins. But the schedule's more favorable on the back end. Where do you see this team now, knowing that they've kind of found that identity and they found some rhythm on both offense and defense?
Well, I look at games like the Chargers. Of course, they have to play the Chargers twice. The Chargers have a lot of injuries. I believe their center's out for the year. Just went on. Russell Wilson has a thing because he has blood clots. So I believe they could split that at least. They still have the Bengals, who are god awful, and the Broncos at the season finale. So that's 3 games right there right off that they'll probably win. So I would say 6 or 7 if you're gonna remodel what I said at the beginning of the season. I know I said 3-4. A lot of people are coming at me like, are they gonna lose all their games now? They're gonna go 3-13 still? Of course not. So of course, I'm a little off base with that. We'll see what the second half of the season brings. Again, if you don't have Terrell Williams there, you want to see what Derek Carr can do without a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver. I know they brought in Zay Jones, but he has to get his feet with that team. So I know the schedule eases up, but you want to see if they can sustain this. Can they sustain this? And I think again they'll rattle off a few more wins. And I don't see them as a playoff team yet. Again, they're still young. Part of the basis of my prediction was because they're still young. They're still a team that's still learning. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, Mo, I agree with you there. I think you're going to see, again, a step forward, a step back at times with a young roster like that. But at least they have gelled, and they are starting to play really well together. Mo, as always, thanks for joining us. We'll make sure people read you this week at silverandblacktoday.com and, of course, over on Bleacher Report. We'll talk to you real soon, my man. Have a good day.
Of course, appreciate you guys having me on. Enjoy the bye week. Enjoy the games today.
All right.
You too, Mo. Thanks, Mo.
That was Moe Moton, senior NFL columnist for silverandblacktoday.com. You can catch his work there weekly, sometimes twice weekly. Also here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 and on Bleacher Report. We're going to step aside when we come back. We're going to talk about the biggest surprises to us so far in 2019 when it comes to the Raiders, their play, and their roster. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today, coming to you live today from the beautiful Emerald Isle Casino in Henderson, Nevada.
Yes.
Don't go anywhere.
It's coming Saturday night, October 26th, to the Orleans. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, Las Vegas' only all Raiders talk show. That's right. We're in the bye week, but we don't take weeks off.
That's right.
We go through the summer. We go through holidays. It doesn't matter. We're all here for you, for Raider Nation, and we love you being here. We're also thankful to be here today at Emerald Island Casino.
Nice.
I wasn't saying the D. My crew corrected me, so I appreciate that. Emerald Island Casino in Henderson, Nevada, downtown Henderson. Come on down. Enjoy yourself. It's a great spot if you haven't been downtown Henderson and the resurgence. Emerald Island is part of that. So, guys, we're back. We're going to be talking now here to end the hour about surprises. What has surprised you, if anything, with this Raiders team? I have a couple things that I want to talk about. Some are mild surprises, some are bigger. But Kelly, we were talking during the break about Raiders surprises, this rebuilding year, this team getting ready to move here to the Las Vegas area, and you had a really good answer, which is...
Is there anything that sticks out as like a biggest surprise? Because for me, the team's pretty much where I expected them to be. You know, I thought they'd be 2-3 instead of 3-2. You know, the win in London was a nice win for them. But when you look at the roster, you look up and down everywhere, the way people are playing, it's kind of where I was expecting everybody to be. You know, Jacobs was a first-round running back, so you knew he was going to be good. You know, I wasn't expecting much out of the defensive guys because they are, first year, they are young. You know, the rest, Waller's been a surprise, but not that. I mean, it's not like we're talking about Travis Kelce here. He's put together a few good games, So for me, it's like I'm not surprised by much. It's pretty much this is kind of what I was expecting, and I'm glad to see it's what I'm expecting because the other option was they were disappointing.
Yeah, exactly. Chaz, what about you? I mean, you look at this team. You mentioned Waller. You talked about him earlier. You brought him up first today on the show, and clearly that's been a surprise. Although the kid had the talent, he just had the off the field issues. What else? When you look at it after 5 games coming off this big win in London, for you, what did you see and what surprises you?
Kind of the same things we talked about with Mo. Obviously Waller. Tahir Whitehead's been a bright spot. Max Crosby as well. The one thing Mo said earlier, we were talking about Derek Carr and kind of his pedestrian play. I've always been a big Derek Carr supporter. I spent a lot of time in Fresno when he was there. I got to know him a little bit through the media. And I know he's a great person, citizen. He's a solid leader. After that 2016 season, I think everyone was convinced that he was a solid football player as well. But something this year, second season in the system, you'd expect him to take a step forward, and he hasn't really accelerated. He's just kind of leveled out. And I don't want to say he's a game manager because I think he's a much better player than that. I don't see him going through his progressions. He's quick to check down. Scott, you pointed out in that Kansas City Chiefs game, second half of the game, we're down by 3 scores, and he didn't throw a ball with more than, 7 or 8 yards in the game.
He threw one.
Okay.
Be fair. He threw
right.
one.
Be fair.
Right? So, and again, against the Bears in the game last week, we had a bird's eye view from the press box up there, and I saw multiple times where he didn't go through his progressions. He didn't look off the safety. He just kind of stares down his intended receiver, and the most glaring was that 3rd and 8 play just before the fake punt, where, he stared down Derek Carrier and he threw the ball, 4 yards short of the first down. Meanwhile, he had Foster Moreau on a 10-yard slant, and Moreau had separation. He had Jalen Richard on a dump off to his left with 30 yards of real estate in front of him. Now, of course, Carr led him down the field, and ultimately the game-winning touchdown. But coming into the season, Derek Carr was kind of the least of my worries, and now I got to say I'm just a little bit concerned. I really thought he was going to take a nice step forward.
Well, no, and that is a surprise because that is not what you thought during the preseason. So I would agree with that. I think for me, the Tahir Whitehead playing over his head at this point, and I mean that. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I'm just surprised how well he's been able to stand up and play in the middle spot and to do what he needs to do there, because that was not something I was expecting. Now, I didn't expect that they would have to have him do that either, but clearly that's what has happened.
It's been nice to see him step into that. I asked him that question. I was at the press conferences in London, and Tahir Whitehead came out, and I asked him, I thought that his game is kind of elevated to another level this year. And I asked him what he's done differently. He said nothing. He said he's done the exact same thing. He's stuck to his regiment. He just, he works hard. He's done the same thing year after year. And now we're seeing his hard work pay off.
Yeah, and for me, I think the one, as we get set to hit the top of the hour here, for me, surprise, Kelly, you mentioned, I mean, there was no question that Josh Jacobs, in a draft, especially that was not deep at running back, he was the best running back in the draft. So he goes in the first round to the Raiders. I expected him. We talked early on about he had the potential to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. For me, though, the surprise is how well the line has blocked for him and how they've been able to play not only in that zone scheme that we all know Tom Cable for, but to play power, to play inside, to play outside, Colton Miller. So how that unit has come together and how the running game has come together has surprised me, and clearly why they're at 3 wins instead of 1. And so to me, that's the biggest surprise. But other than that, I expected it to go up and down, backwards, forwards, and I think we're going to get that more. I think Raider fans have to know that you're going to hit some dry spots, and then you're going to hit some other spots where you're thinking, okay, this team is doing really well. But in the meantime, everybody's got to be pretty happy with where they're at right now, I imagine.
Yeah, I think, as a Raider fan, you've got to be excited, and as typical Raider fans, they're a little too excited because you're hearing playoff talk, you're hearing everything like that. You need to slow that down a little bit. But
hey, why not? We gotta enjoy it, man. It's been 17 years of dismal. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy a winning record after 5 games. It's been a while.
Yeah, but it's sort of like you're going on a date and you think you're going to third base, but really you're only going to first.
To go back to what Chaz was saying about Derek Carr, though, I think it's a time that we might have to have a painful conversation and say, is this an Alex Smith type situation? To where you just see where his ceiling is and the team decides to move on. Right. Not because he's not playing well, not because he's not winning games, but you see that you can't win a championship with a guy like Derek Carr. Because I hate to say it, but I'm kind of starting to see that to where you see his ceiling and it's just not going to be high enough.
Well, and Vic Tafer last week on the show, right, said 50-50. I think his comments to me kind of sunk in. He's around the team every day. And let me say this. This is not a criticism of Derek Carr. It is teams and where they're at and where they're going. All right, we're going to step aside, top of the hour. When we come back, more Raider talk from the Emerald Island Casino in Henderson, Nevada. You're listening to Silverback Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
CBS Sports Radio.
Join us for a special Silver and Black Today live at Emerald Island Casino this Sunday morning at 8 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. The nation and the league arrive in Las Vegas in 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Welcome back to the Emerald Island Casino, the jewel of Henderson. That's right, downtown Henderson. We are live on location for the second week in a row. Last week, we were just down the street in London. Today, we are in Henderson, closer to all of you. It's good to be home. It's good to be talking Raiders football during the bye, live here from Emerald Island Casino in Henderson. So thanks for joining us. I want to thank Moe Moton, our guest last hour, as well, with his analysis of where the Raiders are as well. And we're here to talk more about what's going on with this team and the bye week.
I have a phone call. Do you want to take it?
We have a phone call.
Yes.
We will take the phone call. Mark, thank you very much.
Who's on the line?
Who's on the line? Who we got?
Wally, dude, how you doing?
It's the king of callers, and that's Wally. How you doing, Wally?
Welcome back, boys.
Thank you, man. Wally. How you feeling about your Raiders?
I'm feeling pretty good, man. The way that early schedule set up, it wasn't looking too good, but I'm impressed with, other than the Minnesota game, and Gruden's had them boys fired up coming right out of the chute.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. We got 28, 33, and 30 coming out of the backfield, three-headed monster.
That's right.
And I hate to tell you, but the way you beat Mahomes and them guys is keep them boys sitting on the sideline.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, that's the defense, and that's what we're going to be talking about here, Wally, at the top of this hour, is the defense. How have you felt about that? You know, I think there's a lot of unfair criticism of draft pick Clelin Ferrell out there right now. The kid's developing. Meanwhile, his teammates are picking him up. They're doing what they need to do. They've had a pass rush, which is, of course, over the last couple of years been very poor for the Raiders. I mentioned they're ranked 16th in the league in total defense now, which is a big jump up from 29 or wherever they were last year. How you feeling about that as you watch the games, Wally? Are you excited about this defense and where it's going?
Yeah, I was at the draft party with you guys, and you guys didn't seem to like the picks, but Jacobs has turned out good. Cleveland's turned out, he's still got, work to do, but definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that's why we don't coach in the NFL, Wally, or we're not general managers as well.
How were the bangers and mash over there?
It was good. Actually, Chaz took me to a Portuguese chicken place.
Oh, man. Peri.
That was good. So, I actually I didn't have the traditional British food, if you will, but everything was great. People over there were awesome. The stadium was beautiful. So we appreciate it. Wally, as always, man, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, one more thing.
Yeah.
You guys must have been like rock stars over there, being you got all your teeth and everything.
Chicks dig it.
I love Wally. Okay, Wally.
Super models or something.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Thank you, brother. You take care now. That's Wally from right here in Henderson. We appreciate him calling in. All right, guys. Raiders bye-week review. We're going to look at the defense now. And, Kelly, let's start with the defensive line and linebackers. You took a look at that. What about this up front, this defense, the ability to rush the passer, the ability to stop the run, and both the front line and the linebackers? What do you see in here so far through 5 games?
Well, it started with their ability to stop the run. The Minnesota game, if you take that out, because Dalvin Cook's one of the best running backs in football, they just kind of had their way with them. And a lot of the stats, a lot of the rushing yards in that game were kind of in garbage time when the game was over, when you're going to be expecting to kind of give up some of that stuff.
Right.
But if you throw that game out, they're giving up just over 2 yards a rush, which is really good. Kansas City only rushing for 20-some yards in the game. That's impressive, except for the fact that they didn't have to run the ball. They just kept throwing it.
Yep.
But they shut them out in the second half of that game.
That's right.
I don't care who you're playing. That's showing something. But, yeah, the pass rush hasn't quite – it's been better and it's getting better, but it hasn't quite been what you want to see. But it all starts with the stopping the run with this team, and they've done an excellent job with that. And you mentioned Ferrell. People need to realize he's not going to be a big sack guy. That's not why you draft this guy. They're doing it for the run, and you're seeing the benefits start already. Mo Hurst had been struggling a little bit this year, really turned it on in London. Hopefully that's going to kickstart him, because we got 2 sacks in London, 2 sacks on the season. Bye week's going to come at a nice time now. He can maybe take a step up, and I was a bigger fan of the Max Crosby pick. It's one of the few picks they had I was excited about, I don't know if we talked about it on the air versus off the air, but I said that Crosby would have more sacks than Ferrell this year.
Right.
I believe that. I still believe that.
Yep.
And because it's just that's more of what he does, So the defensive line starting off good. Now, you mentioned the linebackers. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but Gunther's system does not prioritize linebackers.
Where does that come from? Where do people think that that's not? I mean, you look at his time in Cincinnati, right, with Burfict, of course, who came over to the Raiders this year for a few games. How do people get to this nonsense where they feel like that he doesn't need linebackers in his system?
Well, here's the thing. You may not prioritize linebackers, but in the NFL nowadays, you need speed at linebacker, and the Raiders do not have that.
Right.
Whitehead's done a really good job with what he's done.
Yep.
We'll see when we'll see him at the middle linebacker position if this stays. If he keeps playing this level, elevates his level.
Yep.
He could be a fixture there. Or this could be a situation to where you have somebody has to be making these tackles, somebody has to be making these plays. He's just the guy in that position. It's too early to tell because anytime you switch linebacker positions, you're switching all different kinds of responsibilities.
Exactly.
So it's not something you're just going to 1 or 2 game sample is going to be able to tell. This is something you're going to have to go back and look at the end of the season because the linebacking core in this Raiders team needs a major revamp, and they need it quickly. Because there is just a lack of talent, a lack of speed, a lack of athleticism on this roster.
Right.
Well, and I think, for me, a guy that I want to point out who's been, I think, working hard, and is he all the way there yet? No, but playing really well is Nicholas Morrow at linebacker. So you talk about a kid they really needed to step. He showed promise the last 2 seasons, and coming into this year, you wanted him to step up. Now with injuries and suspensions and all this other stuff that they've had to deal with on defense, he's really, Chaz, I think, shown us something, and that's what you want from a player like that.
And like you always point out, reps. He's going to be getting more reps because he's getting more time, and he had that big interception in the game last weekend. So I agree with you. Now, as far as you're talking about, we don't have any young players at linebacker that we're developing per se, right? But you wanted me to go over the defensive backs, and I thought the DBs have done really a pretty solid job so far this year. Worley, Joseph, LaMarcus Joyner, those guys have been solid. And I know I gave Garyon Conley kind of a bad grade from my training camp report, and I don't think he's played as bad as maybe his optics have looked. He's been in position a couple of times where the receivers kind of made a great adjustment on the play, and I know he's had a couple of bad penalties.
But let me stop you there for a second on the defensive backs, because you had something to say. I will say this. LaMarcus Joyner has been everything that they thought he would be for them,
yes,
especially from a leadership standpoint and his play. So you talk about a winning free agent acquisition by the Raiders, by Mike Mayock and John Gruden. That's one of them.
Right.
With Conley, I don't know about you guys, but with Conley, there's times when he plays really, really well.
Yeah.
I got no problem. His coverage overall, I think, has been pretty excellent. Now, the Chiefs game, a lot of people go back to that film. It's like, look, it was Patrick Mahomes. He's throwing the ball at places that are very difficult to throw.
And a couple of those weren't Conley's fault either.
No. They weren't his fault, but I think there's a consistency issue there that you expect out of a first-round draft pick after 2 or 3 years in the NFL. You expect him to be a little bit further down the line. That's the only little bit of criticism I would have of him. I think he's played well.
Yeah, well, when you watch a player, you take away the 5 best plays you see from him. You take away the 5 worst plays you see from him.
Right.
And then you look at the rest of them. And Conley's problem is you take away his 5 best plays, he's got a good play or 2 here. You take away his 5 worst plays, there's a lot of bad still there.
Right.
Because for him, it's not that he struggles a little bit. When he's bad, he is bad, and it looks 10 times worse. Like I said, it looks 10 times worse than it actually is, but it just seems like if you can kind of tell the first part of the game, if he struggles a little bit, it's just straight downhill.
Right, and you kind of want him to be average, but his needle kind of points down just a little bit on the unfavorable side. But okay, so get back to the DBs. Mo wrote in his article about Eric Harris, having that interception to seal the deal in that game in Indianapolis. Eric Harris has been a big boost, and now the Raiders have Nevin Lawson coming back off of the suspension. And, the better news is that you got Trayvon Mullen and Jonathan Abrams kind of, waiting to be the cornerstones of the defense as well. They're kind of biding their times. So there's our youth. There's our kind of our young core that's going to be growing, and they're playing behind these guys and learning.
Well, I think you mentioned Eric Harris. I think Eric Harris, as he's gotten more reps, has really stepped up as well. He's one of those guys like Tahir Whitehead that I think are playing probably above where I expected them to be out of necessity. But he's shown that a little leadership. He can sometimes be, I think, a little bit lackadaisical out there. But overall, I'm happy with his play, and I think that him performing at the level that he has been very significant for that defensive backfield.
He's a hard worker, and it shows. And, you wanted me to talk about the special teams segue. Eric Harris had that big special teams play last week when he ran that fake punt for a first down, which ultimately turned into the game-winning score. So special teams, obviously there was that big battle against Johnny Townsend and A.J. Cole, and that turned into nothing. A.J. Cole's been phenomenal, and Daniel Carson, the kicker. Those two have been phenomenal. When you don't have to hear about them, that's when you know that your kickers. when you're not talking about them, that's a good thing, right? And Dwayne Harris, the ankle injury is probably the biggest concern on the special teams. But I think it sounds like he's going to be back here after the bye. And I know you guys mocked me earlier in the summer when they signed him, and I said it was a big signing. But for a guy like that, field position is key in football. And he's a guy that gives you good field position. So it'll be nice to have him coming back off of the injury.
It will be. All right, it's time to step aside and take a break. When we come back, we will roll on. We're going to look at the offense right here from the Jewel of Henderson, and that is, of course, Emerald Island Casino. You are listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
All right, Rodney Hudson brings us in as well as another pop balloon. Woo!
Perfect timing on those.
It's, keeps us on our toes. We were in London thinking, oh my gosh, we got to watch, the whole terrorism thing they tell you from the State Department. No, it's all good. But we are here live from the Emerald Island Casino, the Jewel of Henderson in downtown Henderson. By the way, if you didn't know this already, the Emerald Island Casino and the Emerald Island Grill, Best of Las Vegas gold medal winners for the Best Henderson Casino. Yes. That's right, Best for 2019. They also were voted the Best Henderson Restaurant gold medal for the Emerald Island Grill, which we are going to enjoy after the show, I think.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Also, bronze winners countywide for the Best Video Poker and also the Best Paying slots.
Wow.
So Emerald Island, just amazing.
This place is great.
It's a great place. You got to come down and check it out. Also, this menu, I'm showing our video audience because it's phenomenal. They talked about them winning the gold medal, the best restaurant in Henderson. Check this out, guys. How about prime rib roast beef hash skillet?
Sold.
For breakfast. The filet mignon Bernaise Benedict, the filet mignon French roll sandwich. They have a Denver omelet, but for Raider fans, that might be a problem.
Get
right?
rid of that.
But it's a good omelet. They have everything. This menu is killer. You've got to come out. The best restaurant in Henderson, according to the Best of Las Vegas. Of course, the big contest every year in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. All right, we are back to Raiders football, and we're going to now talk with the team here about the offense. And what I want to start off with, guys, here is talking about Derek Carr. We had some folks who were upset at our analysis over Derek Carr. And if you look at the numbers overall, Derek Carr is doing a great job. He's coming off a great game, a great couple games where he's been efficient. He's moved the chains. He's helped his team win. As I mentioned earlier, John Gruden talked about Derek Carr helping the running game, even running the offense efficiently. You brought up Alex Smith, Kelly, and I think that's a fair analogy there. But when you look at Derek Carr, he's about middle of the pack when it comes to sort of the numbers in the league. He's got a high completion percentage rate. A lot of people, they want to criticize him for throwing the shorter passes. That's what he's been asked to do. Is he hitting all the downfield progressions? Does it matter if you're winning the games? I say no, but definitely something to watch out. And then if you look at time in the pocket, he's getting more time in the pocket. And guess what? He's still releasing the ball quickly, but what I see is I don't see him with the happy feet. Now, we saw it against Kansas City a little bit in the second half. We saw it against Minnesota a little bit, but his protection wasn't as good. When he has the protection overall, he is staying in the pocket. He's helping his team create plays in the intermediary short game, and that's been working for them when you toss in the running as well. So I think that's what people need to realize is when you talk about Derek Carr, you're not either loving him completely without looking at faults, and you're not just hating him either and pointing out his deficiencies. Right. I think that's true of any player. You look at deficiencies, you look at strengths, and you say, okay, is this where you want to be? Is this going to help you get there? And I think that's no different with Derek Carr.
Yeah, I've always kind of been the glass half full guy, as we all know. But Kelly's got me looking at the thing, and as you say,
it's Kelly's fault.
Well, no, it's a good thing because I like wandering through the world with these silver-colored glasses on. But it's like you said, looking at his deficiencies, and I've never really done that. I've always been a supporter of Derek Carr, so all I really look at is the positives. And now that I've kind of gone back and I'm starting to look at it totality, and seeing these things, it's just a little concerning.
Yeah. And when I said he reminds me of Alex Smith, people forget Alex Smith will get you to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Alex Smith will win you a lot of games.
Right.
It's just there's a certain ceiling he's not going to break. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think Derek Carr has a lot of that in him to where he can win you a lot of games. He can make you a playoff team, but I just don't know if he's got that next step in him to take him to win playoff series, to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
I'm not saying the guy's not a good quarterback.
No.
You could have Derek Carr in your team for the next 7 or 8 years, and you could win a ton of games. I just don't think he's the type of guy that can get you that next step to win you a Super Bowl.
We talked about kind of, I guess, Trent Dilfer kind of thing now. It's a total team effort. So these guys, obviously there's been outliers where you just had a fantastic defense or you've had a fantastic quarterback and you're going to take you all the way. But it's a total team effort. And as long as he does his job and the rest of the team does their job, I think that their ceiling could be a lot higher.
Well, and that's the thing. I think you look at Derek Carr, a good quarterback, an even better guy.
Yeah.
And it's just weird because I had someone say to me, if it's the guy, it doesn't seem to be a question. Like there's not a question that he's the guy for you forever, right? Until he's done with his career. And for whatever reason, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying you don't get that sense. Like, people in Green Bay don't question whether or not Aaron Rodgers is the right quarterback.
Right.
I'm not going to use the Mahomes example because that's too new and just too freakish. But you look at those guys, and it's just not a question.
Yep.
Right?
The only problem with that, though, there's only like 5 guys that you're not questioning. So there's a great
point. I agree.
There's 25, 26 teams out there right now that think they might have the guy, or are happy with their guy, or no, they don't have the guy.
But they're still on the fence.
So you're on the like you said, you're on the fence. You're not sure. You think you do. There's so few just that Tom Brady's our guy.
Yeah, of course.
Aaron Rodgers is our guy. That it's kind of hard to do that analogy because you can win without the guy if you've got enough around him. If he's almost the guy.
Right. And let's not forget the Raiders just beat back-to-back playoff teams from a year ago. Essentially on the road. I know the Bears was the home game, but, it felt like there was more Bears fans there. And it wasn't the frozen, December Chicago road game, but, it felt like a road game. And so beating 2 playoff teams from a season ago, it's going to bode well, going forward.
Yeah, I had to fly 12 hours to go to my first Raiders home game.
It's amazing.
Well, and if we look at the rest of this offense, the other thing I want to look at is, of course, running back. First of all, the Raiders, 9th in rushing offense coming into the bye week, 10th at a 4.9 per yard per carry. Again, mentioned earlier, run inside, outside, power, zone, it doesn't matter. They have great blocking. For all the talk about the wide receivers not being number one wide receivers, not having the talent that they need, the blocking downfield guys, including, I'm going to call him a phenom, even though he's not, because I love watching him play, is Alex Ingold. Yep. The blocking that has been happening for this Raiders team downfield from all offensive positions has been phenomenal.
Yep.
Yeah, and you've really seen it, like I said, from the skill position, from the wide receivers, from the tight ends.
Yeah.
There was one play they had against the Chicago. It was a weird format. They had one guy running a route, then they had two tight ends on the other side of the formation, both just there to block Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
And what happened? They stopped him dead.
Yeah.
So, it's been a full team effort, and that's kind of what you need.
Last week's game was pretty much a clinic on blocking. And you just hope that they can bring that effort week in and week out. And that's the hardest part for every football team and the National Football Team, is just bringing it every week like that.
Right, and if you look at, I'm holding up my stat sheet here, and you look at the running backs, again, what is Josh Jacobs doing, the company he's in? Of course, Christian McCaffrey, who's been a freak of nature and just playing out of his head atop there. When you look at the top running backs in the league, Marlon Mack close behind him, one of my favorite guys. Yep. And then you have Jacobs right there next to Dalvin Cook, right ahead of Ezekiel Elliott.
Yep.
And you're looking at 96 run plays, 88 attempts, 438 yards coming in. And again, that 4.9 average, 4 touchdowns overall. I mean, guys, what can Josh Jacobs do maybe to improve, maybe except for getting the pitch from Derek Carr occasionally, which we understand it was one time his fault, one time Carr's fault. But what do you see in Josh Jacobs' game that he can improve on? I don't see much. I think he's doing everything he needs to do.
Yeah, just learning the system, getting more acclimated, just knowing exactly where he needs to be, and getting, those miscommunications have really been the only downfall so far.
Yeah, and you've got to kind of expect that, to be honest with you, because it's a fifth game of the year. You've only had so much time around there.
Yeah.
I still don't understand what happened on that pitch, because Carr threw that underhanded 90 miles an hour.
Yeah,
like,
crazy.
I've seen that 1,000 times, and I'm still not sure what was going on there.
Yeah.
But okay, that's a mistake they had right there. Everything else in that game, from he's excelled in the run blocking.
Mm-hmm.
His patience and vision have been really good. It's just, you need reps, you just need time. You're going to fine-tune what you're doing. He's basically playing on talent right now.
Yeah.
Once you actually get craft in there, he's going to be tough.
And like Mo wrote in his article, it's just kind of the learning curve, right? And more reps, more time together. And as long as we're seeing progression this year, and I really think we're seeing it. I think Raider fans should be very happy with the way things are going and progressing so far. And that's what we talked about. The season, we didn't expect fireworks, but as long as we saw everybody getting on the same page, getting better week in and week out, players getting better as themselves, and that's what we're seeing, and that's a positive going forward.
No, that's right, and I Josh Jacobs, I like that combo.
It's a great combo.
That I could see for years. I think Josh Jacobs, too. The thing I like about him is his elusiveness when he gets into the open field as well. He's able to move around. And what you want in a running back, I mean, yes, he's young, but the mileage on running backs run, as we've seen with Todd Gurley in L.A., right? It starts to run up quickly on them. And so I think that we have to make sure that if you're Josh Jacobs, you want to avoid contact as much as you can. And I think he does. He runs over people, yes, but he doesn't take, I think, on needless hits, right? He's there. He's able to do what he needs to do in the open field to avoid them a lot of the time.
But he's great at blocking. You know, you heard a lot with Gruden and Mayock. You know, he's a three-down back. He's a three-down back, right? And he's an exceptional pass blocker as well. And he'll get right in there. And he's not afraid to take that hit, and he's not afraid to give hits, which is one of the things you really want to see.
Yeah, no, that's it. All right, it is the bottom of the hour already as we talk through the Raiders bye week, and that was the defense, the offense. When we come back, it's time to be more offensive. And that is because it's time for Kelly's Corner.
Not this week.
Not this week. Uh-oh, he's going to be politically correct this week. You're listening to the Silver and Black today, live from Emerald Island Casino, the Jewel of Henderson in downtown Henderson. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
We are back here live from Emerald Island Casino, the Jewel of Henderson in downtown Henderson, Nevada. That's right. Award-winning restaurants, casino, Best of Las Vegas, gold medal winners for Best Restaurant in Henderson, Best Casino in Henderson, bronze for all of Las Vegas, the whole valley, in best paying slots and best paying video poker. So I might try my hand at that a little bit, see if I can take some money home. Anyway, we're here talking Raiders football, and we appreciate you guys all being with you. And yes, Kelly did major in NFL quarterbacks in college. For those wondering if he's an expert, absolutely. But Kelly, it's more importantly that time of the week where everyone gets really excited, and that, of course, is for Kelly's Corner, which we bring you now, Mr. Kelly Kreiner.
So this is the 30th anniversary of something that happened in the NFL that's kind of changed the landscape of the way everybody does business in the NFL. It was 30 years ago yesterday, actually. Do you guys have any idea what I'm talking about here?
Not that old.
30?
Yeah, 1989, October. A certain trade for a player.
Herschel Walker?
Yes. The Herschel Walker trade was 30 years ago yesterday.
Wow.
And if you look at the reverberations from that trade, it basically set one franchise back for decades and the other one up for 3 Super Bowls.
Right.
It's a fascinating trade if you look into it.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody knows about the draft picks, all the draft picks and everything they've got, but the actual trade was set up for players with the conditional draft picks if they got cut and didn't make the team. Well, Jimmy Johnson and Dallas didn't tell this, obviously, because they wanted to get all this in there.
Right.
They were never keeping any one of those players. They were always cutting those guys.
Right.
So when Minnesota makes this deal, they don't realize they're losing 3 firsts and 3 seconds. They're thinking they're going to get a couple of those back because they're going to keep the players and everything. And yet Dallas, at that point in time, was just cutting bait with everybody, getting every single draft pick to set them up for the future. You can just boil this trade down to one thing. They traded Herschel Walker for Emmitt Smith.
Yeah.
Because Emmitt Smith was the running back they chose with one of those Minnesota picks. So you traded Herschel Walker for the all-time leading rusher in the NFL and got 5 other draft picks. The insanity of that, it's like you think you'll never see anything like that again. The closest thing we saw was the Ricky Williams trade, where the Saints trade their whole draft and then a number 1 next year to move up to get Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
Which, in hindsight, when you look at that draft, didn't turn out nearly as bad as everybody thought it was going to, because the Redskins got absolutely nothing out of their draft picks.
That's the thing. You have to hit on those picks.
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying that it has completely changed the way franchises look at it, because nobody wants to be the team that gives up that draft pick that gives up that player.
You still have to make those picks.
Yeah. You are always going to see teams move up to take a quarterback. You're always going to see teams move up for draft picks. But giving up draft picks for players is something that the NFL wasn't big on doing until a couple years ago.
So did they change the rules?
Well,
the way those trades went down and the way all the picks became.
Oh, to where they were cutting and everything? Basically, you just don't have that stipulation, and nobody's going to put that into a contract.
Right. Okay.
Anymore.
So they just found a loophole. They did it real quick, and now.
Well, but now you're seeing. To your point, it changed the way things happen in the NFL. But now you're seeing some things currently this year where we see the kind of demanding of trades that are happening that we've seen in the NBA for a while, Chaz, and you were in the NBA for a long time. Talk about that and how that's changing.
Well, you're seeing a new style of GM now. You're seeing more of an NBA style GM to where they will trade picks for stars.
Right.
And you are seeing some desperate teams make some very bad moves. Laramie Tunsil going for 2 firsts and a second is probably he's a mid-level, upper mid-level left tackle. Still young, can still get better. But the Texans are in such dire straits and don't have a GM. Their head coach, who's basically the acting GM, who's trying to save his job and doesn't care about the draft picks, will throw anything in there to try to win now because he may not be here next year.
Of course. And he's trying to fill a need, right?
But 2 first-rounders for anybody is a stretch in sports nowadays.
Only for Khalil Mack.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So let's bring it back to the Raiders here, because look at the Bears, the position the Bears are in now. So you saw Josh Jacobs beat them in London, as we did in person last week. And then they got Mitch Trubisky, and they have no draft picks this year.
No, but the Bears still make that trade 100 times out of 100.
I'm not saying they don't.
Because if they have a competent kicker, they're in a Super Bowl last year.
That's true, too. But what I'm saying, though, is that you see that, you're right, you see these draft picks go for star players, and that was a perfect example of Mac going to the Bears. It helped them kind of get over the hump on defense, even though they're coming off this loss to the Raiders. Still a good team, still going to be in contention in that division.
Yeah, you're seeing the newer GMs that instead of gambling on that draft pick,
right,
which when you hit on a draft pick is priceless,
yeah,
but you have to hit on it. You're seeing a lot of GMs that are like, we're close. I'm taking the guaranteed product over the gamble. Because there's always somebody willing to take that gamble.
Yeah, but
there's always some front office out there. It's like, you know what? You give us the 18th pick in the draft, we can get that number 1 defensive end. We can get that guy. And more often than not, you don't.
No. Right, but then you look at Jalen Ramsey. He's sitting out there, right? But they want 2 number 1 picks. Nobody's going to pay it, Chaz.
No, that's too high of a price. But I wanted to circle back. I think the main reason that Mike Mayock is probably the Raiders general manager is because John Gruden wanted to make sure that he nailed these picks this year and next year, correct? And Mike Mayock, great guy. I'm sure he'll turn into a great general manager because he's got all that rapport with every other team. You know, he already knows how to deal with players. But he was specifically brought in to nail the draft. And when you make a huge trade like that, the worst thing, like you said, the Washington Redskins, the worst thing you want to have happen is you don't nail the draft.
Yeah. And you mentioned Mayock. You know, Mayock was brought in because Gruden's the GM of this team.
Basically.
So they brought Mayock in there for the draft. Like you said, for
100%,
the draft.
100%.
That's going to be his, you know, Gruden's going to run every day. He's going to have more player control than anything.
Yeah.
But he's going to leave Mayock to like, listen, the most important thing is this draft. This is your baby.
Yeah.
This is for you.
Right. And you saw that when they kind of excused all the scouts before the draft.
Yeah.
And they already had a plan already set up.
Yeah.
But to my one question I have, you know, it always the dynamic of a team structure. You know, we talk about the owner, we talk about the general manager, and now the coach. And here with the Raiders, and I guess you know we're seeing it with New England, the coach is basically running the show, right? So it's always a fascinating dynamic to me because you see like the Washington Redskins are going through and they're blaming the owner, and it's not his, you know, he's trying to put the best people in the best positions, but ultimately the owner gets the blame for it. And so my question to you would be, you know, in the NBA, really you see the acrobats running the circus. Do you think that's ever going to happen in the NFL? Are the players ever going to dictate? I don't think I can't see that happening in the NFL.
One player doesn't have as much power on an NFL team as an NBA team,
right.
So you're not going to be like Patrick Mahomes, a guy like that in a couple years,
right.
Can kind of dictate.
We saw Antonio Brown do it a little bit.
Well, but his wasn't so much that he was dictating everything where he wanted to go. It's just he made it a lack of options of people that were going to take him.
Ultimately at the end,
no.
But I think his plan was ultimately to get to New England, but Pittsburgh wasn't going to trade. So he said, well, let me get out here first. Let me go circumvent, you know, and usurp, and then I'll get my way there eventually. But
I think you're giving that crazy man too much credit.
But I will tell you, though, I'll disagree with you on Washington. It is the owner's fault in Washington. If you look at the amount of people who've gone through that organization, the organization, the owner picked the quarterback, not the coach. Well, not the GM.
Yeah,
and so that's why they continue to fail. Because guess what happens? Guess what happens is no matter who they hire, they fail.
And the owner brought in that front office, which was at no point ever capable of doing what needed to be done.
He brought in Shanahan before that. You know, he brought in people that are capable. But just
right.
something with the
That's
mix.
my point, though. They're capable people, but they don't get the job done. Why? Because it's like Jerry Jones was at the beginning of the Cowboys. He interfered so much with that organization.
Right.
They could, when he drew back and let them do what they needed to do, they still haven't won a Super Bowl, but nonetheless.
And the turning point in Dallas was the Johnny Manziel draft.
Correct.
When he was basically turning in the card for Manziel. Jones wanted him. They had to tackle him in that war room, and they take Zach Martin instead, Pro Bowl offensive lineman, sets up that team. That team is a dumpster fire right now if the Manziel's the pick.
Yeah, rubbish. No.
And but you mentioned Jalen Ramsey. Nobody's given up 2 number 1s for Ramsey. I've talked to somebody I know that works in the league. There's at least one team that will do that, and Jacksonville will not trade him because the owner wants Ramsey on the team because he's the only star power they have.
Right, and there again, there's the owner. So I know it's a discussion that we could have, you know, each team going through the progression, owner, general manager, coach, you know, how the dynamic works. Ultimately, it falls on the owner, I think, right?
Well, I mean, you start at a body rot.
Or whoever you choose to be the CEO of your team. In
body
essence.
rots from the head down, and that's a sports team too. If ownership is bad, it's just going to permeate that whole
Well,
office.
they also say stuff rolls downhill, right?
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, you look at, Chaz being with the Lakers for so long as you were.
Right.
Look at your stepsister down the street,
Well,
right?
hey, I don't want to get into that,
Clippers.
but I will talk about Jerry Buss, arguably the greatest owner in professional sports all time, right? He put his hands together and he made magic, and obviously getting magic that first year, and that just started him on his way. Segue. With 10 championships and 30 years of owning a team, that's something to be said for that. And he did. I was around him a lot, and he made the decisions. And he had this general manager. He gave him his marching orders, and then you distribute that throughout the team, throughout the coaches. And so if you do have a smart, knowledgeable, now you see all these owners, and they're just kind of millionaires that want to have a toy, they want to have something to play with, and they're not knowledgeable, and they interfere more than they should. And it's a tough dynamic, and so you want to see that. And I give props to Mark Davis. He puts the right people in the right. He's been going after John Gruden for how many years now, and so I feel like we've got the right pieces in the right place, and we see it progressing. And I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, no, it's true. Ownership can be your biggest asset or your biggest liability. You see it all over the league in all different sports. But interesting discussion. All right, that was Kelly's Corner. Good job, Kelly.
Always.
Kelly's pig out. If you look at the video behind him, there's a great sign right behind him. It's awesome. That's what we're going to do after the show. Yep. All right, well, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we will have our NFL picks for the day.
I'm on the
Chaz and Kelly are doing pretty good. Chaz, I think you're in the lead. I'm catching up. But anyway, you're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, coming to you live from the Emerald Island Casino, the Jewel of Henderson. We'll be back right after this.
This afternoon at 1:15 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, the bye week edition of the show, coming to you live from the Emerald Island Casino, the Jewel of Henderson in downtown Henderson. You got to stop by. Try Henderson's top-rated restaurant. That's right, the Emerald Island Grill, voted by the Las Vegas Review-Journal Best of Las Vegas 2019 as Henderson's best restaurant. How can you not stop by?
No.
Want to, again, thank our executive producer, Mark Bonilla, who's here on site.
I'm glad to bring you guys out here.
Yes.
It was a whole plan.
Thanks, Mark. It was awesome.
I
Mark,
didn't feel like driving 180 miles an hour from Las Vegas down to here to do our talk show on 840 later.
It made it
was
nice
easier
easy.
to bring three guys out here and 18 cameras.
Yep.
18 cameras.
It worked out.
But also Mark's getting some screen time. Look at that.
Tried to shrink it. I shrank it a little bit.
You did good. He was adjusting our camera in the break. He is full service, and we appreciate him doing that as well. Chaz Osborne, Kelly Kreiner, I'm Scott Branson, as we get ready to close out the show. And guys, we're going to talk a little bit about our NFL picks. And I just want to say, I texted you like a schoolgirl yesterday because I have not been able to pick a college game to save my life.
And you texted early. I can't believe that. You don't text.
It was Alabama, though, so I was thinking.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I don't believe in jinxes, so get out of here.
Okay.
I just either suck or I did. So I hit a 3-teamer yesterday,
yes.
right? So I was very happy about that. It was very exciting. My wife was also very excited because I gave her more money to bet in our William Hill account. So she was happy about that. But anyway, we're back here. We're talking about NFL football this week. And, of course, there was another London game today, right, guys? The Buccaneers had to play a division game.
The Buccaneers lose a home division game because they're in London.
Yes.
Screw you, NFL.
That one, a wild and woolly affair over in the UK. 37-26. The Panthers are leading. 2:23 left in the fourth quarter. Jameis Winston having himself a day.
Oh.
You ready? 27 of 49. 351, wait for it, 1 touchdown and 4 picks. He's been sacked 6 times.
And a lost fumble.
That's right. Every touchdown pass he's had has been out of the shotgun. I wonder why.
Jameis.
With that offensive line. Christian McCaffrey rushes just 21 times for 35 yards. So that injury, we're not sure what it is.
Well,
he's got 5 receptions.
Tampa Bay's rush defense has been great all year.
Yes.
That defensive line's brutal. They're rough, man. They're going to stop you on the run.
Now, did Carolina got to London a day before Tampa Bay, I believe?
Correct.
So
there's something to that, getting there early.
There is something to that. You could see that with the Bears last week.
And with the Raiders, yeah. I mean, one year over
the
the
Raiders
other.
were there. They had a few practices. They looked sharper in the practices. And the Bears did look a little jet lagged. So, I want to take anything away from the Raider victory, but the Bears did look a little sluggish to start the game.
They did. So that's the game that was in action this morning over where we were last week in Tottenham in London, UK. So we're hearing British music now. What is going on? They're sending us back. They deported us.
Let's say we didn't have this last week.
I know. Where was
that would have been good last week.
Oh, boy.
And then our program director, Paul's here, and the shirt he's wearing, he's got the British flag on his
shirt.
shirt.
What's he doing? He's a week late.
Better late than never, I always say.
He's got his British shirt on. Okay, back to the football at hand. Okay, guys, we're going to go through our picks for the week, and we're going to start with Kelly, who's in last place. No, I'm in last place. Kelly, what do you got for us this week?
This is an ugly week, an ugly card. There's like 10 games I like to bet. I ended up betting 4. Jacksonville -2 at home against New Orleans.
Oh.
I'm a big Teddy Bridgewater
guy.
I keep saying it. I'm betting against my guy, I guess.
Yikes.
Him on the road. I'll take Jacksonville. Minshew Mania is running crazy. I'll take the Jacksonville defense.
Gotta love them.
It's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game. And in the exact opposite of that, I will be taking the Arizona-Atlanta over.
Ooh.
I don't know what it is. I don't care what it is.
You're just going to take it.
I'm just taking the over.
They don't play defense. That's what it is.
I did the same thing last night with the Boise State total. I bet the total.
So you got...
Don't know what it was.
No reason.
It wasn't 90. I won, I'm sure.
Sometimes you don't need a reason.
Yeah.
You got the shoe in Jacksonville. +2 is where you got it?
-2.
-2, excuse me. -2.
I'll check that Arizona.
It's 2.5 at William Hill right now. And then you had the over-under...
51.5.
51.5. Okay. All right. So there we go. Chaz, the Magic Man, you've been on fire early in the season, my man.
Thanks for jinxing me, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
That's nice.
Chaz can't lose.
You can pick 2 of my picks for me because every
I don't
time
know. You turned on the game the other night and suddenly the no-hitter was gone. I think it's you. No, go ahead. No, you go. Tell me what your picks are. No, don't give me tickets. Tell me what your picks are.
Pick 2.
Pick 2. You're just picking 2.
Pick 2.
All right. We got, let's see. We got the Rams -3.
Nice.
Right?
I like that.
So the Rams
Jets
without Todd
+7. 7.
Oh, Jets
Wait a minute.
+7.
My fingers must have made a mistake on that betting.
The Rams without Todd Gurley.
Rams, no
right?
Gurley.
They're going to have to go on the golden arm of Jared Goff,
and the
which it is golden with as much money as he got, right? And the Jets.
Boy, I don't trust
+7.
Jets +7?
+7. The Jets.
Are they playing Miami?
No, they're
Dallas.
not. They're playing Dallas.
I'm in trouble.
That's a big one. That's the big 0-5
I couldn't
game
get the
for the Jets.
half?
All right, so we got Rams -3, Jets +7 for Chaz. And I'm going to go opposite side of Kelly. I bet the Saints +2.5.
I was going to say, I know you're not taking the under in Atlanta.
No, sir. No, sir. +2.5 Saints. And then I'm taking the Seahawks even.
That's the game I just kept looking at.
It's tempting, right?
The Seahawks are a fraud, in my opinion. They're a fraudulent record. But
why do you say that?
Look who they've beat and how they've won. It's just like they're not a 4-1 football team,
right?
But I just can't back the Browns for nothing.
Either
right
one.
now.
That's a game you just.
That's like
I think the Browns have been the fraud all along. Now I'm not saying they don't have a good base that they're building on in Cleveland because I do think so.
They're a losing football
Right.
team. So you think they're if they're a fraud and they're losers, then you think they're a better team?
No. Look. All I had to hear during the preseason was the Browns. Guess what? The Browns are a rebuilding team, and the Seahawks are going to best them today. I just think give me Russell Wilson over Baker Mayfield in that contest.
They're a good team with a trash offensive line, and we've seen it.
Rubbish.
Yeah, but yeah, you're saying they're a fraud. And I'm saying, well, no, because they've been bad all year. If they were a fraud, you'd think they were good.
Well, I just want to know who's going to win the Redskins-Dolphins game.
Redskins, but there's no way I'm the 3. It was the 3.5.
3.5.
If I can get a 3 or a 2.5.
That's what I'm saying. The Browns-Seahawks game is the same as trying to pick the Redskins-Dolphins game.
Nah, because neither one of the Browns or Redskins are trying to tank. Miami will invent ways to lose.
The Tua tank, baby.
It's this has
Tua Bowl #1.
There are several stories from several NFL people. This was started 2 years ago. The second Tua got in that national championship game as a freshman and won that game.
Absolutely.
Well, and you looked at that's what I was going to talk about. You talk about these games, and thanks for your picks, guys. We'll give you an update on that. Hopefully you enjoy those for entertainment. We don't have to say entertainment purposes anymore because gambling's legal everywhere.
I know. It's weird.
So when you look at that situation, we're talking about the Dolphins and the Redskins. Clearly the Redskins have their quarterback, supposedly, which means nothing anymore because look what happened last year in Arizona, right? You had Josh Rosen there. That was their quarterback of the future. Then they forget that. No, we got a new coach. We're going Kyler Murray. So I don't know if that means anything anymore. All we know is that Tua's going to go #1. It doesn't matter who's there. I'm sure it's going to be Miami. That's been their plan, to your point. Past that, though, Justin Herbert, Paul Ihander's not going to like that, but guess what? He has more happy feet than Derek Carr's had in his entire life back there in Oregon. Jake Fromm, we saw what happened to him yesterday. He had been sliding anyway.
Joe Burrow's the new hotness, man. Everybody's in love with Joe Burrow now.
So to me, if you look at it, and if you're a Raiders fan thinking they should go get a quarterback next year, I don't think there's going to be anybody there. It's not as strong of a class as we might have thought.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Herbert. He's going to be the 2. Burrow's going to be up there. There's everybody likes Love out of Utah State. You can manufacture quarterbacks that you're going to fall in love with. You're going to find them up there. So that's the last thing you got to worry about is there going to be somebody worth taking because they'll just take him anyway because you will gamble on the quarterback.
Yeah. Well, what about what Mo talked about earlier? I was watching those games yesterday as well. The Clemson game. The Oklahoma game, that kid Lamb was unbelievable. I know, the Raiders, we've got to be looking at a #1 wide receiver, correct?
And Lamb's the 4th or 5th best wide receiver
Is
in this
that right?
class.
Because there was a couple guys on Alabama yesterday that
Well,
looked pretty
that's
solid.
the thing. Henry Ruggs is the 2nd best pro prospect, in my opinion.
Right.
He's also the 2nd best wide receiver on his team.
Wow, that's amazing. So
Judy,
Judy's
well, he looks like a player.
Just route running speed and his ability to just cut and stop on a dime for somebody as fast as he is insane for somebody that young.
I know that's something we're going to be talking about in the future, but the Raiders are definitely going to be looking at wide receivers in the draft next year.
Yes, and linebackers. All right, guys, that's the show. Chaz, thanks for being here, brother.
Incredible show. I love being here. Emerald Island.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Emerald Island.
Yes.
We say it right. All right, guys. For Chaz Osborne, for Kelly Kreiner, I appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure you check out silverandblacktoday.com. You can catch the archive of this show as well, where you get your podcast, your audio. We are just glad to have been here. Emerald Island Casino, the Jewel of Henderson in downtown Henderson. For our producer, Mark Bonilla, for the guys, I am Scott Branson. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.